Nestor is extremely annoyed by his childhood friend, but ever since she attempted suicide, he has changed, becoming overly indulgent with her. Even when she scratched my face, he just shielded her behind him, saying, "She's almost dying. Why are you still arguing with her?" So, I stopped arguing. I quietly left his world, until one late night, he saw his most powerful brother in the circle publicly announce his relationship. I was wearing a well-tailored men's shirt, nestled in the arms of a tall and handsome man, kissing the side of his face. That night, it was pouring rain. Nestor, however, went crazy and came banging on his door. "Baby, I know you're doing this to spite me. Come out. Let's talk, okay?" Chapter 1. Nestor has an annoying childhood friend. Every time we go out on a date, she always tries to tag along. This irritates him to no end. One day, he and I went to see a newly released movie. Along the way, Regina had already called 3 times to bother us. Nestor didn't hesitate to block her on WeChat. He rubbed my head and said, "Don't worry, I have a girlfriend. I must keep a distance from any childhood friends." As soon as the movie ended, an unknown number called him. When he answered, it was that haunting voice of his childhood friend. "Regina, again. Nestor, where are you? I told you I'm on a date with my girlfriend. Stop calling me. Don't you understand human language?" Her voice was thick with sobs. "Wait, don't hang up. I really have something important to tell you." Nestor hesitated for a moment, but still hung up, his brows furrowed tightly, as if something was bothering him. When I asked him if the dress I was trying on looked good, I had to ask several times before he came back to his senses as if waking from a dream. "It looks good. You look good in anything." I changed back into my original clothes. "You seem distracted. Are you really worried about her?" He was stunned. He lowered his head and kissed my forehead. "Why would I worry about her? Then why are you so absent-minded?" "Don't worry about her. She's a psycho. Let's continue our date." Chapter 2. It was 9 in the evening. There was a fireworks show by the moat. The brilliant fireworks bloomed in the eyes of countless onlookers. I was holding onto Nestor's arm, taking pictures. Before I could snap a few, his phone in his pocket started vibrating again. This time, it was Regina's mother calling. I don't know what she said on the other end. Nestor's pupils suddenly contracted, and his face turned pale. "Okay, Auntie, I'll be there right away." I asked him what was wrong. "Regina attempted suicide. I have to go to the hospital now." "She tried to kill herself? Just because you didn't answer her calls and ignored her? That's a bit extreme, don't you think?" He irritably ran his hands through his hair. "I don't know, but either way, I need to go. Do you want to come with me?" Though I was reluctant, I was also quite curious. What new trick is Regina pulling this time? As we pushed open the hospital room door, we saw Regina with red-rimmed eyes, a bandage wrapped around her wrist, struggling to sit up. "Nestor, you're finally here." And then, the moment he approached the bed, she hugged him. "I knew you cared about me." The scene made me extremely uncomfortable. Nestor didn't push her away, sighing in frustration. "Regina, do you realize how unreasonable you're being? Attempting suicide over me is a childish act. I'm not doing it over you." As she spoke, her already swollen eyes filled with tears again, and she timidly looked at me. "Could you please step out for a moment? I only want to tell him." Chapter 3. I waited at the door of the hospital room for about 10 minutes. Nestor came out, looking very serious. I had no interest in whatever secret she shared. I only cared about when we could leave. "Are you guys done talking? Can we go now? It's been a long day, and I'm a bit tired." It's not that I'm cold-hearted, but Regina's incessant calls and deliberate harassment had completely eroded any goodwill I had towards her. Not to mention, the first time Nestor introduced me to her, she greeted me with a bright smile and a handshake, but secretly squeezed my hand as hard as she could. Such petty tricks were beyond childish. "Regina has stomach cancer," Nestor suddenly said. My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I doubted the truth of it. The reason she attempted suicide was that she felt like a burden. "It's all my fault. If only I had answered her calls. She could have had someone to talk to. She's from a single-parent family, and if it weren't for me, she wouldn't have felt so hopeless. So much so that she thought of herself as a burden and tried to kill herself. You can't blame yourself for this. I tried to comfort him. No one could have seen this coming, but Regina has relied on me since she was a child. She sees me as a brother. And what did I do? After getting together with you, I stopped caring about her. I'm such a piece of shit. A cold wind blew through the window at the end of the corridor. Something in my heart slowly turned cold. I said nothing. Nestor didn't notice anything. His head down, trapped in deep self-blame and torment, unable to hear anything else at that moment. Then, Regina's delicate voice came through. Nestor, can you stay with me tonight? I'm really not trying to bother you. It's just, my mom. She has to work the night shift at the supermarket, so she can't be here. It's okay. I'll stay with you. I won't go anywhere. Chapter 4. It started pouring rain outside. I glanced at my watch. I need to go home. Then you go ahead, he replied, bending over to tuck Regina in. Without even looking at me, the girl's eyes were locked on him, filled with longing. If this man wasn't my boyfriend, I might have been moved by this tender scene. It's 10:30 at night. I reminded him. Nestor, are you planning to let me go home alone? Regina mumbled softly. Sister, I usually finish work at 11 at night, and I always go home by myself. Oh, I glanced at her. It's your business if you don't have a boyfriend to take you home. You don't need to tell me. Nestor frowned. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. How about this? I'll ask Joseph to take you home. He's my brother, a real playboy, but he's free most of the time. Joseph, back in college, he was a prominent figure at University A, and now he's one of the most eligible bachelors in City A's elite circles. Nestor currently works at the headquarters of the Zhou Group. Bro, what are you doing? Come help me out, will you? On the other end, a lazy male voice replied. I'm about to sleep, whatever it is. Let's talk tomorrow. I didn't expect him to sleep this early, but I had no interest in bothering others late at night, so I told Nestor. Forget it. I can go home by myself. Don't trouble anyone. Nestor was about to hang up when Joseph asked. Wait, what do you need help with? Come take my girlfriend home, and I'll treat you to dinner later. How about it? Okay. Send me the location. When it comes to free food, he's quick. Luciana, wait here for him. I'll go back and stay with Regina. Nestor patted my head reassuringly and turned back into the hospital room. I felt a surge of frustration with no outlet, raging inside me. Chapter 5. Nestor often tells me that Joseph is a notorious playboy. So, I was surprised that he was so confident about Joseph taking me home. Nestor, with certainty, told me Joseph might be carefree most of the time, but when it comes to important matters, he's reliable. You can trust him on this. Joseph arrived faster than I expected. This man had strikingly bold and captivating eyes, with the top button of his black shirt undone, broad shoulders, long legs, and a devil-may-care smile that hinted at a bit of mischief. I waved at him. Mr. Zhao, over here. Luciana? Yes. I nodded. Sorry to trouble you tonight. He chuckled softly. No need for that. I went back to the hospital room to find Nestor. Regina was clinging tightly to his arm. When she saw me enter, she smiled at me. Sister, you haven't left yet? I ignored her. I spoke to Nestor, who was sitting beside her. He's here to pick me up. I'm leaving, bro. Nestor nodded towards Joseph behind me. Take good care of my girlfriend, okay? Joseph's smile was a bit enigmatic. Don't worry, I'll take good care of her. I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, but I felt there was an underlying meaning in his tone. He picked up my bag. Let's go. I'll take you home. We made our way to the underground parking lot, where Joseph opened the car door for me. Thank you. I got in. He walked around to the other side and got into the driver's seat. I was still lost in thought about what had happened at the hospital, staring absent-mindedly out the window, not hearing him remind me about the seatbelt. The next second, a light scent of sandalwood filled my nose as he leaned over to buckle my seatbelt. As I lowered my gaze, my eyes met his deep, dark ones. Luciana, is pretending not to know me fun for you? My scattered thoughts snapped back into focus. I smiled slightly at him. Long time no see, brother. Chapter 6. After my parents divorced, my mother sent me to live with her best friend's family. That's Joseph's family, where I stayed for 10 years. From the age of 7 to 17, Joseph is only a year older than me. During that time, I always called him brother. In the second half of my junior year in high school, my parents got back together, and I moved out of his house. Coincidentally, that was also the year Joseph was in his senior year and left for college in another city. After that, we rarely saw each other. Later, after I got together with Nestor, I ran into Joseph again at one of their brotherly gatherings. He had become even more charismatic than before, wearing a black shirt, with broad shoulders and a slim waist. His flashy demeanor still drew the eyes of many girls who would secretly glance at him, but his attitude towards me was completely different from before. Distant and cold. I thought he had forgotten about me, forgotten about the little sister who used to wait for him outside the senior year classrooms every day after school so we could go home together. So I pretended not to know him too. I just didn't expect him to come pick me up today. Still remember me as your brother? The cityscape slowly receded, the dim lights on the street casting shifting shadows over his pale fingers. Of course I remember. How could I forget? But you, when you saw me the other day, didn't you just ignore me? He chuckled softly but didn't answer directly. Luciana, your taste in boyfriends doesn't seem very good. I gave him a sideways glance. Oh, and your taste in girlfriends is so much better? Sorry, but I'm single. So that's not an issue. I didn't believe him for a second. You're single, really? Back in high school, he was very popular with the girls. He used to get love letters all the time. And thanks to him, many girls would try to win me over by giving me snacks. When I was in my senior year of high school, not long after, I overheard my mom on the phone with his mom. She mentioned that he had a girlfriend in college. I ended up crying under the covers for several days because of it. So now, when he says he's single, I'm very skeptical. What reason would I have to lie to you? Fair point. When I tried to get out of the car, I found the door wouldn't open, not leaving without adding me on WeChat. Not long after I got home, I received a call from Nestor. Did you get home safely? I'm home. Are you really not coming back tonight? No. I'm not. Regina has no one to take care of her, and I'm worried. You should get some rest and don't worry about me. After taking a shower, I checked Regina's WeChat moments. I was a little surprised, but also, it was somewhat expected. After all, when I added her as a friend, she had set her moments to be hidden from me. Nothing compares to your company. The accompanying photo was of Nestor sleeping beside her hospital bed, with her hand making a peace sign next to his head. The text carried an unmistakable sense of smugness. At the same time, I suddenly received several notifications on my WeChat moments. Joseph had liked some of my past posts, but conspicuously skipped over the ones with photos of Nestor and me together, as well as any of our couple-related posts. I couldn't quite figure out what he meant by that. Chapter 7. A few days later, Regina was discharged from the hospital. According to her, she was already in the late stages of stomach cancer, and the doctors advised her to stop treatment, saying she should just eat and drink whatever she wanted. Because of this, Nestor turned down a significant portion of his work. He said he wanted to spend her remaining days with her. At first, I tolerated it, considering that the dying deserve respect. But I soon realized that what Regina wanted was all of Nestor's free time. Several times, while we were having a meal together, Regina would call, and he'd leave immediately. He would hurriedly apologize to me and then leave me sitting there alone. After it happened a few times, I confronted him. She has so little time left. Wouldn't it be better for her to spend it with her family? Her family doesn't care much for her. She's from a single-parent family. I thought you could understand. Understand. My ass. It's fine if you accompany her occasionally, but you don't have to be at her beck and call like a nanny. Can't you maintain some distance? She's a little sister I've watched grow up. And now she has stomach cancer and needs someone with her. Can't you stop? Ugh. He trailed off. Forget it. I don't want to argue with you. Just don't start a fight. I responded. Your problem. Don't put it on me, okay? He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. I really don't know what to do. Luciana, can you please try to understand? It's just for a month or two. I swear. I only see her as a sister. I don't want to deal with this. If you want to be with her, then go ahead. Don't bother informing me. Chapter 8. That Saturday morning, I received a call from Nestor. Didn't you say you wanted to go to Disneyland? Yeah. Have you sorted things out with your dear little sister? Just when I thought he had realized his mistake and wanted to make it up to me, his next words were, Regina also said she wants to go. Do you want to join us? If you're coming, I'll buy an extra ticket. I was instantly furious. Join them? The way he phrased it. It sounded like he was taking her and I was just an afterthought. As if I were the extra one. I'm not going. Why not? Haven't you always wanted to go? He used to be pretty sharp, but ever since Regina's suicide attempt, it seemed like his brain had rusted. I replied, seriously? Who goes to Disneyland and brings along a little sister? At that moment, I heard Regina's somewhat pitiful voice on the other end. Sister doesn't want to go. Is it because she's prejudiced against me? Or maybe she's uncomfortable with my illness? Nestor responded, it's not prejudice. It's just that you kept calling me back then, so it's natural for her to be a little suspicious. Regina, sounding even more aggrieved, said, forget it, Nestor. I know whatever I say won't matter. Maybe it's better if just you two go. After all, I'm in this condition. You don't have to worry about my feelings. Hearing that, Nestor once again felt like the worst person in the world. Don't say things like that. I can always take Luciana another time. But I need to be there for you. I hung up the phone, not wanting to hear any more of their back and forth through my phone. A dull pain throbbed in my chest, and I felt a little nauseous. He didn't message me for the rest of the day. That evening, I saw Regina's latest post, a grid of 9 photos. In almost every one, she was holding onto his arm, her head resting on his shoulder. They looked just like a couple deeply in love. Her caption read, "You're always the best to me." And in the comments, she added, "Don't jump to conclusions. Everyone, this isn't an official announcement. This is just my childhood sweetheart. But the person taking our pictures at Disneyland today said we look so perfect together. Haha. I almost forgot, this rotten apple was still on my friends list. I deleted her from my WeChat. At the beginning of the year, Nestor bought a car. He promised that he would pick me up from work every day. But he hasn't come even once lately. And my nosy coworkers have been subtly asking if we broke up. I just replied with 2 words. Almost there. After the sadness, all that was left was a growing pile of disappointment. In the end, isn't this exactly what Regina wants? But I'm not going to let her have her way so easily. Chapter 9. At this moment, a ding sound came from WeChat. It was a voice message from Joseph. Have you had dinner? I don't know how to cook. Usually, Nestor would pick me up after work to go out for dinner. But recently, I've been eating takeout for several days in a row. I'm tired of it. And after browsing the food delivery app for 10 minutes, I couldn't find anything that interested me. Not yet. I'm about to order some takeout. Are you home? Yeah. If you're home, I'll come over and pick you up. Let's go eat something good. Takeout isn't healthy. Normally, I would probably decline. But right now, I don't seem to have a reason to refuse. He has his good sister to accompany him. So who doesn't have a good brother? Sure. Come pick me up. Chapter 10. Joseph arrived quickly. As usual. Come down. Today, the man was wearing a casual jacket. His hair was styled lazily and effortlessly. And when he saw me, a faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips. I suddenly thought of those high school days. Back then, I often waited for him at the door of his classroom, waiting for him to finish his evening study session so he could take me home on his bike. His classmates all knew about our relationship. As his friends filed out one by one, I would hear them call me little sister. Joseph would laugh and scold from behind. Get lost. When did my sister become your sister? Then he would ruffle my hair and put his arm around my shoulder as we walked downstairs, saying, "Don't randomly acknowledge brothers. Got it?" "I won't." It's strange how so many years have passed just like that. I gathered my thoughts and smiled at him. "Brother. What do you want to eat?" "Anything is fine." During dinner, Nestor sent me a message. "Spent the whole day at Disney yesterday. I'm exhausted." Came back and crashed on the bed. "What are you up to, baby? You're not mad, right?" I really wanted to laugh. He had regressed to the point where he couldn't even tell if I was angry or not. I just replied, "Let's break up." Then I put my phone aside. Joseph asked me, "What's up?" "Nothing. Just broke up with someone." "You were right that day. My taste in boyfriends is pretty bad." The man smiled faintly. The warm light fell on his brows, making him look particularly gentle at that moment. "Boyfriends are something you can find for fun, but husbands are different." He paused and added, "Especially someone like Nestor. It's good you broke up sooner rather than later." I nodded, and a thought crossed my mind. I asked him, "But is that how you treat women too?" "No. How does that saying go?" He lowered his eyes in thought. "A man who doesn't respect himself is like a rotten cucumber." I finished the sentence for him. I laughed after saying it. "You actually know that saying? You've got some knowledge. So, don't misunderstand me. It's really strange. A while ago, Nestor told me that Joseph was a notorious womanizer. At that time, I didn't believe it. But Nestor said it with such certainty that I was half convinced. After all, Joseph does have the charm that attracts women. Chapter 11. The next day after work, a colleague came up to me and said, "Oh my God, there's a super handsome guy downstairs at the office building." My heart is fluttering, and I'm a married woman. I didn't take it seriously. "Really? How handsome?" "Extremely handsome, and to be honest, he's several times more handsome than your boyfriend." After saying that, she even showed me a photo she had secretly taken. "But I bet he's here to pick up his girlfriend." The man looked sharp in a black shirt, with a stern expression. His eyes lowered as he looked at his phone. "Isn't that Joseph?" When I went downstairs, I saw that familiar yet distant figure from afar. "Hey, handsome." He smiled as he walked toward me. "It's only been 2 days, and you're already this cheeky? You have no idea. You've single-handedly stirred up the whole office chat group." I remember back in high school during the big break, Joseph would pass by my building on his way to the snack shop, and he'd always come up to find me and bring me something tasty. Whenever that happened, it would cause quite a stir on our floor. After he left, I would share the treats with my friends, and they would sigh while eating. "Luciana, I'm so jealous of you. Not only is your brother the school heartthrob, but he's also so good to you." Boo-hoo-hoo. I was so proud. Chapter 12. So many years have passed in the blink of an eye. This man still attracts attention just like before. "So, why are you here? To pick up your girlfriend after work?" He looked at me. "I'm here to pick you up." That night, he took me to dinner, and we talked for a long time. Before I knew it, the initial awkwardness from when we first met had faded away. Picking me up after work, I tilted my head to look at him. "That's so nice of you." "This is nothing." He scoffed lightly. There were a few messages from Nestor. After I sent the breakup text that day, I hadn't responded to him. Weren't we supposed to never say the word breakup so casually? "I know you're just being a bit moody, but I absolutely won't agree to breaking up. Please don't ignore me on WeChat. Babe, I know you're mad at me, mad that I didn't keep my promise to pick you up after work. So don't worry. I've found a brother to fill in for me for a while I'm with Regina. He'll be picking you up." Then he sent a bunch of "I love you" stickers. This kind of solution is unprecedented. I frowned as I finished reading and then replied, "As long as you're happy, I'm fine with it." "But you know my relationship with him, right?" Nestor replied, "Of course. Joseph told me everything. You've been living at his place for 10 years. That's why I trust him. He'll definitely take care of you like I take care of Regina. As a sister." Honestly, I don't know how to respond to that. I put away my phone and turned to ask Joseph, "So, did Nestor ask you to pick me up?" You could put it that way. He curled his lips, tapping his knuckles on the steering wheel. Or you could see it differently. I was a bit confused. He turned to look at me. What? You don't like me picking you up? Of course I like it. Why wouldn't I? Didn't you always pick me up after school in high school? Although back then, you were riding a bicycle. Yeah, back then you were so timid. Every time you sat on the back, you'd cling to my shirt. By the end of the semester, all my uniform shirts were almost down to my knees. Ha ha ha. It's not as exaggerated as you say, but those were simple joys. When the wind brushed against my cheeks as I sat on the back of the bike going downhill, I was filled with excitement. In the days that followed, Joseph came to pick me up punctually every day and took me to dinner. Meanwhile, Nestor seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth, and I couldn't be bothered to check up on him anymore. Chapter 13. Until more than half a month later, on the night of my birthday, Nestor suddenly appeared at my door. He was holding my favorite durian in his left hand and a birthday cake in his right. He smiled at me and said, "If you don't open the door soon, the property management might kick me out. This smell is too strong." After putting the things down, he immediately tried to hug me. I pushed him away coldly. Heh, my colleagues already celebrated with me at work today. Oh, come on. Don't be so stubborn. Colleagues can't compare to a boyfriend. Honestly, it's been my fault these past few weeks for not coming to see you. I actually wanted to wait for your birthday to make it up to you. Silly girl. Did you really think I forgot your birthday? Don't give me that. Aren't you going to spend time with your good sister? I'm not spending time with her because... He paused for a moment. She's here to celebrate your birthday with me. I think there's been some misunderstanding between you two, and I wanted to use this opportunity to clear things up. Before I could react, the next second, Regina jumped in from outside like a mischievous monkey. Sis, happy birthday! Then there was a loud pop. The party popper in her hand exploded, scattering confetti all over the floor. At that moment, the already not-so-sweet air felt even more suffocating. Since she wanted to put on a show, I'd play along with her one last time. Chapter 14. I know you've had some misunderstandings about me. You're the person Nestor loves the most, and I feel so bad for taking up his time for so long. As she spoke, tears began to well up in her eyes. I'm sorry. I have a bit of a tear control problem. Nestor, standing nearby, immediately pulled out a tissue and started wiping her tears. His actions were practiced and smooth. Don't cry, Regina. Your sister Luciana isn't someone who can't be reasoned with. I crossed my arms and watched her silently. Seeing that I wasn't moved, she continued, after I leave, it'll just be you and Nestor together. All right. That's enough. Today is my birthday, not your apology session. I didn't feel much, but Nestor seemed to be moved to tears by her words. He said to me, "Why don't you guys work on the cake? I'll go open the durian first." Then Regina said, "I'll cut the cake." I replied, "No need. I'll do it myself." She pouted. "Sis, just let me cut it. Or are you really going to be so unforgiving even after I just apologized?" I paused. Stop pretending. Isn't it tiring to squeeze out those tears? How much is your apology worth, anyway? Her expression changed. Hee. So what? Sis, you know Nestor can't stand to see me cry. With that, she squatted down by the coffee table. If you don't let me join you too, then I insist on joining. If you don't let me cut your birthday cake, then I insist on cutting it. But just as she was about to grab the plastic knife to cut the cake, I was a second faster and took the knife in my hand. I didn't expect her to try to snatch it from me. She dropped her previous frail act and behaved like a madwoman. In the struggle, I accidentally got a cut on my face. I touched it, and there was blood on my chin. She was stunned for a moment. Your face. Without thinking, I slapped her hard. The sound was crisp and loud. You must have brain cancer, not stomach cancer. Chapter 15. What happened? What's going on? When Nestor hurriedly walked in, this is what he saw. Regina's tears, big as beads, were falling like a broken string of pearls. She was covering the side of her face where I had slapped her and said, "Nestor, I accidentally scratched my sister's face. I'm so sorry. Really sorry. I walked over and grabbed her by the collar. Can you stop crying every time something happens? Stand up and explain yourself. That's enough. Luciana! Nestor suddenly shouted, cutting me off abruptly, then immediately shielded Regina behind him as if I were some kind of monster. She's almost dying, and you're still arguing with her? The doctors said she can't be upset. He looked at me with utter disappointment, shaking his head. Do you know how little time she has left? You're making a big deal out of a tiny cut on your chin. Is that really more important than her life? If I was disappointed in him before, now I was completely disgusted. I wanted to shove his face into the cake to wake him up. Regina isn't dead yet, but the Nestor who once cared for me above all else is long gone. I grabbed the cake and smashed it into his face. Get out. We're done. Nestor coldly replied. Fine. We're done. If you hadn't said it, I would have. After a loud door slam, an eerie silence filled the room. You'll never be wronged as long as I'm around. That's what Nestor used to say to me. But unfortunately, the greatest wrong I've suffered comes directly from him. I slowly crouched down in front of the couch. Perhaps it was the overwhelming sense of injustice or the long-brewing disappointment. But my tears finally broke free. But after crying for half an hour, the doorbell rang again. I thought it was Nestor and had no intention of answering. Can you just leave? You're really annoying. However, the next moment, I heard that familiar voice from Joseph. It's me, Joseph. Chapter 16. I grabbed a few tissues and wiped my tears away haphazardly. I fixed my bangs using the reflection on my phone, trying to act as if nothing had happened, and opened the door. I smiled at him. Brother, what brings you here? I was just downstairs and messaged you. You didn't reply, so I came up to check on you. I didn't check my phone just now. I opened the door and turned to walk inside. I didn't want him to see my red eyes. But suddenly, he grabbed my wrist. He pulled me toward him. Why were you crying? The smile on his lips vanished completely. It was replaced by anger. Who hurt your face? Nestor? Or was it that female friend of his? I looked at him and recounted the awful events that had just transpired. He gently wiped the corner of my eye with his thumb, then disinfected the small cut on my chin before pulling me into his arms. Listen to me. That trash isn't worth your tears. Soon. He got a phone call. Okay. I'll be right there. I thought he had something to attend to and felt a bit down. But to my surprise, he went to the door to retrieve a cake, along with a bouquet of my favorite tulips. He handed them to me. Congratulations on getting rid of that trash today. Happy birthday, Lulu. Even though I thought I had cried enough before he arrived, even though I managed to hold back my tears after he came, but hearing those words, I couldn't hold back anymore. This time, though, the tears weren't for Nestor. They were because I heard that long-forgotten, unique name. A long, long time ago, he used to call me Lulu. Back then, I was still in elementary school and was bullied by a chubby kid in the courtyard, making me cry. He got back at him for me, but I kept crying. Lulu, stop crying, he said, trying to cheer me up by calling me that name on purpose. I was successfully distracted by it. My name is Luciana, not Lulu. Brother, don't get it wrong, okay? Lulu, time to eat. Lulu, aren't you going home yet? Lulu? I got used to him calling me that. On the day he left, he stood by the car window, bent over, ruffled my hair, and said, call your brother often, okay? Lulu. Chapter 17. Meanwhile, Nestor brought Regina back to his place and comforted her for a while. Regina said, Nestor, maybe I should go down and apologize to Luciana. I feel like she's really upset. You didn't do it on purpose. And yet she slapped you. She really went too far this time. It was midnight. After finally calming Regina down and getting her to sleep in the guest room, the doorbell suddenly rang. His first thought was that Luciana had come, but he was still angry, and if Luciana had come to apologize, he wasn't planning on accepting it right away. With that in mind, Nestor walked to the entrance. However, as soon as he opened the door and before he could even see who it was, he felt a heavy punch land on his cheek. Burning with pain, he clutched his face in pain. Only then did he see the furious man in front of him. It was Joseph. "What's wrong with you, man? What did I do to you? Who the hell said we're brothers? Do you even realize what you've done? Is your brain full of water?" Nestor couldn't recall Joseph ever using such harsh language, and it was the first time he had seen him this angry. Before Nestor could process what was happening, Joseph landed 2 more punches on him while trying to dodge. Nestor said, all right. I get that you're standing up for Luciana, but just hear me out. If your head isn't clear, don't go bothering Luciana. I'm not interested in your excuses. Don't you even listen to reason? I thought we were friends." But Joseph wasn't interested in hearing any explanations. After beating him up, he just left. After getting a thorough beating, Nestor was extremely frustrated. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that he worked under Joseph, he definitely wouldn't have just taken it without fighting back or saying anything. But after thinking it over, he realized he was indeed at fault in the situation. At Luciana's place, he had handled things poorly, focusing only on Regina's cancer and her need to avoid stress. He hadn't considered that Luciana's chin had also been injured, and it's perfectly normal for a girl to care about her face. But lately, his mind had been so consumed with Regina's stomach cancer that he'd lost perspective. The spot where he'd been punched still throbbed with pain, and the more he thought about it, the more irritated he became. Forget it. He'll leave things alone for now. They both needed to cool off. Once Luciana calmed down, he could buy her an expensive gift to make it up to her. That should smooth things over. Chapter 18. Luciana. When I woke up in the morning, I felt more refreshed than ever before. I drew back the curtains, and in the distant sky, the first light of dawn was breaking. Thanks to Joseph. When I look back on my 25th birthday, I'll remember that there were still some happy moments. He stayed with me all night, talking and comforting me. As the night wore on, I got sleepier and eventually dozed off on the sofa without even realizing it. But when I woke up, I was in bed. The living room was quiet. He was still lying on my sofa, his long legs slightly bent, one hand resting on his forehead. He was so still, like a silent stone in the night. I quickly went into the room, grabbed a light blanket, and quietly covered him with it. Then I slipped into the kitchen to make 2 bowls of noodles. Just as I dropped the noodles into the pot, I heard Joseph's voice behind me. "Not bad. You've learned how to cook noodles now." I turned around, and there he was, leaning against the doorframe, smiling gently. "Just average. Probably the 3rd best in the world." I smiled back. "But I can't guarantee they'll taste good." Back when I was staying at his place, it was always Joseph who made breakfast on weekends. He usually cooked noodles for me, and all I had to do was wait in the living room until he finished. "By the way, I'm planning to move in a couple of days. Do you have any good places to recommend?" "Of course," he said, walking over to me. "Just depends on whether you like it or not. The apartment I currently live in was the one Nestor and I found together after we graduated. When Nestor suggested we move in together, I didn't agree. After all, we had only been dating for 6 months. So, in the end, he lived on the 7th floor, and I lived on the 10th. But now, just being in the same building as him makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. I blocked and deleted all of Nestor's contact information. With Joseph's help, I quickly moved out of that apartment. He and his Regina can be stuck together forever as far as I'm concerned, and spare everyone else from their drama. Chapter 19. Finding a suitable place to live is no easy task. Joseph suggested I stay at his place temporarily. At first, I hesitated. "Won't it be inconvenient for you if I stay here? After all, we're both adults now. He definitely has his own life, and I'm not someone who doesn't know boundaries." He laughed and said, "You didn't find it inconvenient when you lived at my place for 10 years, but now you're worried about it while you're looking for a place? All right, then I'll stay at your place for now." I didn't argue any further. I had a lot of luggage, and I was worried it might not fit. But it turned out I was overthinking it. His home is a villa located in a quiet area right in the bustling city center. More than enough space to accommodate one more person. Before I arrived, he had already prepared a room for me, bought new bedding, and arranged everything thoughtfully. He even helped me organize all my miscellaneous items. Finally, he handed me 2 keys. One was for the front door, and the other for my own room. I became more and more convinced that breaking up with Nestor was a good thing. His little childhood sweetheart acted out at just the right time. Otherwise, I might not have seen his true nature so quickly. I quit my job. Of course, this wasn't an impulsive decision. I had already planned to switch jobs. After resigning, Joseph took me on a road trip to another city. The feelings that had been crumpled up like a ball of paper slowly started to smooth out in the beautiful scenery along the way. Chapter 20. The night I got back, I went to find my best friend, who was working as a singer at a bar. I sat in a booth, drinking, while she sang a special song for me, Happy Breakup. After she finished singing, she came back to join me. Men are everywhere. We don't need Nestor, that piece of trash. We took a shot for every insult. Soon, I couldn't keep up with her pace. I can't drink anymore. If I do, I'm going to throw up, she said. Tisk. TSK. I wanted to curse him out a bit more. Looks like you're done. I'll take you home. She helped me up. But just then, my phone rang. She glanced at it. Brother? I'll answer it for you. I didn't know what she said to him, but Joseph arrived quickly. When we got out of the car, I was too embarrassed to let him carry me, so I staggered my way to the front door. But as soon as the elevator opened, I was suddenly lifted off the ground. He carried me to the soft couch. I grabbed his arm. Hey, do all you men like having a good little sister? He crouched beside me, taking off my shoes. You're drunk. I'm not drunk. Joseph, even if you were drunk, I wouldn't be. Tell me, do you have a lot of good little sisters out there? Or am I just one of your good little sisters too? I didn't know what I was saying. On a normal day, I would never say such things. Are you still thinking about Nestor? I'm not thinking about him. It just made me suddenly wonder. His eyes filled with emotion. Do you really think I see you as a little sister? Isn't that the case? The air was silent for a long time. Joseph lowered his gaze and looked at me. You asked if all men like having a good little sister. I can tell you, he said, looking at me intently. No, I've never wanted to be your good brother. Never. Not before and not now. I didn't know what to say, but the way he looked at me, so intense, so wild, it made me feel like I should kiss him at that moment. And that's exactly what I did. I leaned in and kissed the corner of his lips, lightly. So, Joseph, what do you want to be to me? He hesitated for a moment, his Adam's apple bobbing. Before I could react, he pressed me down into the couch, pinning me by my shoulders. Just when I was about to run out of breath, he pulled back slightly, leaving a small space between us. His nose brushed against mine. Didn't that kiss already tell you? Chapter 21. When I woke up in the morning, my head felt heavy and a bit dizzy. I turned over, intending to go back to sleep, but suddenly found myself facing Joseph's chest. He was lying on his side, facing me, his collarbone and the contours of his chest muscles clearly visible. My heart started beating faster. Oh no. Yesterday, the memory of kissing him slowly replayed in my mind. It started on the sofa. I got lost in the kiss. And then he carried me to the bed to continue. Oh my God, this must have been a dream, right? I got up and went to the living room, pouring myself a glass of cool water. I touched my face, completely clean. He had even helped me remove my makeup. Then, a pair of strong arms wrapped around my waist from behind as Joseph hugged me, his voice lazy. You're awake? Yeah, my head hurts a bit. The sunlight outside was just right, a gentle breeze causing the sheer curtains to sway softly. But my heart was beating rapidly. Come here, sit with me. He guided me to sit between his legs, letting me lean back against his chest. His fingers began to massage my temples slowly and rhythmically. The pleasant scent of sandalwood from his body enveloped me. Feeling better? Yeah, much better. After washing up, we went out for breakfast together. I tried to sound casual as I asked, by the way, did we, do anything last night? He raised an eyebrow. Do anything like what? You know, that. He grinned mischievously and pulled me into his arms. I don't remember. Want to give me a demonstration? He clicked his tongue and pulled me closer, kissing me deeply for a while. Then he said, "Yesterday, you were the one who started it. If you're having second thoughts now, isn't it a bit late? Did I really start it?" He laughed in disbelief. "I should have recorded everything from last night, so you can't deny it like you are now. I'm not having second thoughts. I just wanted to make sure." We kissed, but nothing more. I don't like taking advantage of people. I immediately felt my face heat up. This rascal, completely misunderstanding what I meant. My doing anything wasn't about that at all. "Actually, I liked you back in high school. I wasn't joking. With a brother that handsome. And since I wasn't his real sister, I had a crush on him back then. But when I was in my 3rd year of high school, my mom told me, 'Your brother Joseph's girlfriend is really pretty. They look perfect together.' I cried for a week before I finally managed to get over it and stop liking him. But I never imagined, after all this time, the crush I had at 17 would start to bloom again at 25. Chapter 22. Nestor had just received some good news. Regina's latest checkup revealed that her condition had miraculously improved. He was convinced that it was his constant companionship that had made the difference. He planned to take her out for a nice meal to celebrate. The restaurant they chose was very popular, with 2 rows of people waiting for seats outside, so he and Regina sat down to wait. At that moment, he noticed that the restaurant across the street had closed down. It was the same place where he had taken Luciana on their first date. Luciana, thinking of her name still made him angry. He figured she must be regretting their breakup by now. This was their biggest fight yet, and he had no intention of backing down first. He hadn't done anything wrong. It was her who had started the whole mess. He had decided to give her 2 months to reflect on herself. As he was thinking this, he opened his phone and started scrolling through social media. But as he scrolled, he came across a post from Joseph from last week. "Together with her. He has a girlfriend now?" Nestor squinted his eyes to take a closer look. The next second, it felt like the sky was falling. The woman in Joseph's arms was none other than Luciana. She had her long, dark hair flowing, her face beaming with a smile as she kissed Joseph's cheek, and she was wearing a men's shirt. Regina noticed something was off and leaned over to look at his phone, her voice filled with excitement. "Wow, Luciana found a new boyfriend?" Her voice was more excited than ever, but Nestor's brows furrowed deeply. "I thought your sister would take at least a year or 2 before dating again after the breakup. I didn't expect her to find a new boyfriend so quickly. It seems she didn't care much about you." But he cut her off. "Don't jump to conclusions. She's obviously doing this to get back at me. How could that be? She's already kissing him." At that moment, the restaurant announced their table was ready. Regina tugged on his arm to stand up. "Come on, Nestor. It's our turn." But Nestor's face darkened, and his anxiety reached its peak. "No, I need to find out what's going on. Regina, you go ahead and eat. I'll come back after I get to the bottom of this." He hadn't reached out to Luciana in a long time. He drove as fast as he could, one hand texting Luciana, "What's going on with you and him?" But just as he sent the message, a glaring red exclamation mark appeared next to it. "Shit!" He slammed his fist onto the steering wheel. He rushed into the elevator and headed to the 10th floor of the apartment. He knocked on the door until his hand was about to give out. But Luciana never answered. After knocking for what felt like forever, 2 police officers showed up. Without a word, they pinned him to the ground. "You're under arrest for illegal harassment." "Are you kidding me? My girlfriend lives here." Just then, the door finally opened, but instead of Luciana, a stranger appeared. "Officers, don't listen to him. I just moved in recently, and I don't know this man at all." Nestor was stunned. He craned his neck to look inside, but everything was unfamiliar. Luciana had moved out. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees. He spent the night at the police station. He refused to believe that the photos were real. The officers on duty watched him cry and assumed he was heartbroken. But after listening to Nestor's desperate complaints, one young officer finally said, "As a cop, I advise you to think rationally. As a man, I'll tell you this, you damn well deserve it." Chapter 23. Monday at work. Nestor felt like he was in a daze. Colleagues noticed and asked, Didn't sleep well last night? Those dark circles are something else. He forced a smile. Haha. Just stayed up late playing games. He barely made it through to the end of the day. Then he overheard his colleagues whispering nearby. Wow, the boss's girlfriend is here. No way. Really? The boss has a girlfriend? Yeah. Didn't you see his post on social media? He posted a picture with her. I'm just a low-level employee. I don't have the boss on my social media. Let me see. Let me see. She's really pretty, with beautiful eyes. Hey, Nestor, do you want to take a look? Nestor felt a sharp pain in his chest. No, probably fake news. He still held on to a sliver of hope. Maybe Luciana had come to see him. It wasn't entirely impossible. With that thought, Nestor perked up, gathered his things, and stepped out of the office. Luciana was standing in the hallway. But she didn't pause for a moment. She walked right past him, her skirt swaying, heading straight for Joseph behind him. Nestor clenched his fists. She should have been coming to see him. Why Joseph? He followed them like a thief, too afraid to confront Joseph directly in the office. Luciana linked her arm through Joseph's, smiling as she spoke to him. It wasn't until they reached the parking lot that Nestor finally called out to her. Luciana. She turned to him, her smile fading, her eyes cold. Why are you following us? Nestor felt a pang of bitterness. Why didn't you tell me you're with him? Luciana found it amusing. Who do you think you are? Why should I report who I'm with to you? Luciana. I'm sorry. I didn't know you'd be this upset. But Luciana wasn't listening. She got into the car. Joseph looked at him like he was a joke. In that moment, Nestor was speechless. He remembered the first time he introduced Luciana to Joseph and noticed how she looked at him differently than she looked at others. Even back then, he had felt a twinge of fear. So, he had gone out of his way to paint Joseph as a womanizer because Luciana despised men who couldn't be clear in their relationships. But now, he angrily slapped himself. He was the one who hadn't handled things clearly, right? When he got home, he found that Regina had somehow gotten into his place. Those are Luciana's slippers. Don't wear them. Regina looked at him nervously. What's wrong? Nothing. Nestor snapped, tossing his briefcase onto the couch. But I need to tell you something. Since your condition has improved, you shouldn't stay at my place anymore. I've helped you fulfill your wishes. So go back to your own home. Regina's eyes filled with tears again. Nestor realized his tone was harsh. Sorry. I just need some time to myself. You can go back to your room for now. He drank several beers, trying to numb himself with alcohol. Later, as he was about to take a shower, he passed Regina's room and thought to check if she had packed her things. But then he overheard her talking on the phone with a friend. He stopped in his tracks. What should I do? He wants to kick me out again. I regret saying my condition improved. Then just tell him your stomach cancer worsened. Cry in front of him again, and repeat the whole act. He'll be under your thumb in no time. Regina had just agreed when there was a loud bang, and the door was flung open. She turned around, stunned to see Nestor standing in the doorway. So, your stomach cancer was a lie? You've been playing me this whole time? Regina tried to act clueless. No, Nestor. Listen to me. Nestor shoved her out. You made me feel like a joke. Get out. I never want to see you again. 10 minutes later, her suitcase was thrown out after her. Leave and don't ever come back. And if your stomach cancer was a lie, I hope it becomes real. Regina knocked on the door for half an hour, feeling like she had cried herself dry. The neighbors were alerted by the noise, but Nestor never came out. She tried appealing to the couple next door. I'm his girlfriend. We had a fight, and he kicked me out. But the man said, no, I remember the guy next door. And his girlfriend didn't look like you. I recall her being much prettier. The woman gave Regina a disgusted look. She had eavesdropped when she heard two men arguing next door the other day. You must be the other woman, and you have the nerve to ask us to help you? Watch out, or I'll record this and post it online. Regina felt her face burning with shame. She grabbed her suitcase and slunk away. Humiliated. Chapter 24. 4 days. Nestor wandered through work in a daze. In the end, He took the initiative to resign. He harbored a deep hatred for Joseph and could no longer stomach working under him. One late night, he scrolled through his photo album and stumbled upon old pictures of him and Luciana. The more he thought about it, the more he felt an overwhelming sense of injustice and bitterness. Unable to bear it any longer, he sped to Joseph's house. When he arrived, he didn't even bother with an umbrella. He dashed into the pouring rain, letting it drench him. At that moment, Joseph's phone chimed with a notification. His smart doorbell camera had detected someone lingering at his doorstep. He glanced at Luciana, who was peacefully asleep beside him. He opened the live feed on the app. Outside, under the torrential rain, stood a man soaked to the bone. It was Nestor, frantically pressing the doorbell. "Luciana, are you in there? You left so quickly that afternoon. Come out. Let's talk, okay? I know you're just trying to make me angry. I'm here to apologize, okay?" Nestor slicked his wet hair back, looking utterly defeated. "Joseph, get out here and explain yourself. I trusted you to take care of Luciana, and you took my place? You hit me to stand up for her. Fine, but what's the deal with stealing her from me?" Joseph watched the video with cold eyes. He really was persistent. Joseph quietly got up, left the room, and gently closed the door behind him. He made a phone call. Soon, security arrived and escorted Nestor away. Since Nestor had visited before to see Joseph, the security guards knew him as Joseph's friend, which is why they had allowed him through. But they hadn't expected that this so-called friend would show up in the middle of the night, acting insane. If they didn't know any better, they'd think Joseph had stolen his girlfriend. As the security guard worried about his job, he couldn't help but think that even someone of Joseph's stature could have questionable friends. TSK, the security guard said. "Buddy, it's no use staying here till dawn. You'd better head home. If you don't leave, we'll have to call the police." Nestor finally left. He wandered aimlessly through the streets. As he passed through the busiest part of downtown, he saw a massive display screen mounted on a luxurious commercial building. A crowd had gathered to watch something on it, and he stopped to look up. With just one glance, his face went pale. "Congratulations to Mr. Joseph and Ms. Luciana on their engagement. Wishing you a lifetime of harmony and happiness together." The message was an announcement to the entire city, informing everyone of the upcoming engagement party. Wow, they really make a perfect couple, so handsome and beautiful together. Joseph is the second son of the Zhou family. Damn, another handsome guy marrying young. Ugh, but I heard they've been childhood sweethearts. Someone took a picture. Beneath that giant screen, a despondent man stood there, no umbrella, sobbing uncontrollably, looking every bit the fool. Chapter 25. It was Joseph's first summer break from college, the same summer that Luciana had just finished her college entrance exams. He had everything planned out, ready to take Luciana on the trip to Tibet she had always dreamed of. But before they could set off, he received a text from her. "Brother, I have a boyfriend now. I won't be using this number anymore." He canceled the train ticket he had booked to go see her. He didn't want to admit it, but he had to. She really did see him as just a brother. And he had feelings for her that a brother shouldn't have. The next time he saw her was at an insignificant gathering. She looked just as he had imagined, graceful and beautiful. The moment he saw her, he was filled with an overwhelming joy, eager to embrace her. But there was someone by her side who he found incredibly annoying. It was the first time he found Nestor so irritating. Irritating to the point that he wished Nestor would just disappear from the world, a thought so absurd it shocked him. But it was no use. They were already together. He, on the other hand, felt more like an outsider. So, he had to mask his feelings with indifference, afraid that if he acknowledged her, he wouldn't be able to stop himself from crossing boundaries and disturbing her. And that would only bring her unnecessary trouble. Fortunately, fate gave him another chance. Nestor wasn't the right match for her. Joseph was both furious at Nestor's cowardly pretense of ignorance and grateful that he now had a legitimate opportunity to love her openly. It seemed that the 7 years he spent making the same New Year's wish had finally paid off. He could finally tell her how deeply infatuated he was with her. With that thought, he bent down and kissed her forehead. "Where did you go just now? Did someone come?" Luciana asked, still half asleep. "No one. Don't worry, go back to sleep. You scared me. It's raining so hard outside, she murmured as she snuggled closer to him, her head nuzzling against his neck. Joseph couldn't resist her. He held her hand and whispered in her ear, "We're getting engaged tomorrow. Don't you want to save some energy?" Luciana's hand immediately behaved. The rain continued to pour outside, but in his arms, she felt an unparalleled sense of peace. Let it rain. Let it pour. After the rain, tomorrow would bring clear skies.